Hello, back again. Um, I said I'd do this extra bit of analysis after the previous video on the football coins because there's some potentially interesting things, although now having looked again, maybe less interesting. But yeah, then I've been super distracted on what's going on with gold and silver, so I thought I'd show that quickly. It's crazy. Like I did have a high here at the 161 fib on silver, but it's not something I would have blindly traded because I find these fairly unreliable fibs. Fib extensions, I think they're fine for retracements, but fib extensions when something's at all-time high. And gold I think gave a couple of smaller reactions at various fibs. It's just gone over the 261 here, but yeah, I mean, crazy. It was like silver dropped almost or just short of 40% since yesterday, and almost a bit today. And gold at the moment is 16%, but it potentially could go to 18, 19, 20% if it goes to the weekly zone a bit below, which silver has just hit. So yeah, some crazy moves there. Not really sure what's going on, but it's unusual to have something as big as that. I don't know if the news says anything here. There's lots of talk about people shorting, and I think the London Metal Exchange being closed and various things, but silver tumble as investors soothed by Trump's Fed pick. I don't know. I don't think that's very soothing, is it? But here's why. Yeah, I'll have to read about that later. But I guess the Fed chair is the reason people are giving. Whether that's a valid reason is another matter. So yeah, anyway, onto the football coins. So I made a little list. I also was gonna, so I found this website, so coinranking.com, to show the football club token. So there are a lot more than I've got on my list because I've only got the ones that are on futures. So if you want to go and look at all of the rest of these, feel free. But for me, I limit my choices to futures. So there's all these fan tokens. And then the only other one I have is CHZ because that's, I think that's a platform for them to be traded on. So that was always one of the ones we associated with being a football coin. And the reason I found it interesting is, so I've been going through the full watch list of all tokens since, since the start of the year to update all the annual zones and all the 6 month, 3 month, 1 month zones. And I've been going through the list alphabetically. So this is C. So I noticed this a while ago, but in going through the list, and I can stand by this even haven't got nearly to the bottom of the alphabet now. I think I'm on the V's, V's or W's even. There are very few which have made and flipped monthly and 2 monthly demands. Most of them, so maybe I won't start on CHZ. Well, I'll say briefly. So in most of them are still beneath this zone, but CHZ is one of the few that came back through. The supply was here and it's come back through and closed above. And very few look like that. Most of them look, in fact, not even so much like this. Most of them are actually, in fact, at all-time lows, but have rejected a supply like this. This actually has flipped, but only a weekly. But most of them are looking like this. So most of them, they've made monthly supplies up here. So when I'm drawing all the zones, I'm drawing zones either all the way up here. In some cases, they're closer. Many things are all-time lows, have no demand to the left to speak of. So one thing I noticed going back to CHZ was that this one had flipped. So let's go and show you the 2 monthly quickly. So you can see there that this is slightly different because this did come down into a significant demand there. It has had a big impulse up and it's kind of dropped all the way back down here with that wick that we had in October, which would have been virtually impossible to buy. But actually is one of the higher time frame is a decent structure now. Like you still need to see some more consolidation through here. But this could potentially, run back up and could make a new high. I mean, that seems optimistic because it's crypto. But anyway, so let's look at the higher time frames quickly. So even at least we do have 6 month supply in here. Maybe there's a yearly as well. No, there's no yearly. So we do have a 6 month supply that's up here that could get tested at, the 0.08 area. And then if you see that flip, and then maybe we close up here in July. So this is of interest. And then I asked my partner when Football World Cup was, and he said it's coming up this summer. And apparently I should have known that, but I did not. So I kind of thought it's interesting that when I'm looking through all the coins of all the ones that have flipped monthly demands, like obviously we've got some of the privacy coins, but they were already strong even before that. But the only things that we've seen, the only other thing that I've seen that's strong, I can't say the only one, there are probably a few others, but I've forgotten now. But I was just surprised when I was going through the A's, B's and C's. This was like the first one that I came across that had flipped a monthly zone. So now we've still got, so you can see now we're still in 2-3 month supply. We've got that 6 month that I got alerted a little bit higher, but it closed below on this red candle and then came straight back up through it and hit demand. So when it or if it revisits that monthly zone here, that's potentially a good spot to look for a long, I thought. So I put an alert there anyway. And then, particularly now, given we've got the World Cup coming up. So if we can get an up move, and I've got the 6 month alerted there, and then there's various zones inside, we do have, in the bigger picture, we've got these trend line stops, got a weekly, 3 weekly up there that could get tested. And as I say, this potentially could just break out of this flag type structure, like maybe now it's ready. And it's been a while, and obviously we've had these bounces in between. I don't know where the last World Cup's aligned with. I guess if it's this summer, then it has to be 2022 summer. So maybe that's that pump that we had there. That was July 2022. So maybe we're not going to get, the big move, but at least this time we're coming off the major zone there. So that's kind of interesting. So I've got this alerted here on the monthly. It is early in the year. Maybe we've got a bit more time. Like I say, I'm not going to try and trade this on the lower time frames. If we get down to this monthly zone, the 3 week, 3 day inside it, or back in here somewhere, then I'll potentially look for longs. I haven't done any fibs or any other analysis on this. We need to see obviously what Bitcoin's going to do. So 61's here, like when it kind of aligns with what Bitcoin's doing as well. If Bitcoin does come down and hit 75k in the 3 month zone there, then maybe that would be a good time to buy. But yeah, I just do think these football ones are potentially worth watching. The other one that looks good, so I've only got 5 on my list, as I said, and the 3 bottom ones look bad. The reason I remembered this again was because Lazio was one of the other ones. So this is another one, while I think it's at all-time low here. So it is at all-time low, and it has closed, it's got an annual level at the bottom of this candle. Now, this is an opening candle, so I don't know how viable it is. However, I do see some of them work. But this came up yesterday because the 2 month demand hit here. So this hasn't flipped a 2 month demand. Obviously, it's still under a whole lot of supply. So similar to CHZ, we've got a 6 month supply higher, 3 month, 2 month in there, and another 3 month and 2 month in there. Hasn't broken even any local supply yet, 2 week supply in here. However, again, maybe if the Football World Cup is going to propel these some, maybe it's something that's worth watching. The difficulty with this, it has come off that 2 month already. It's come back up. So as I said, if you watch my earlier video, a lot of stuff has this 3 week supply. Now, again, most things aren't coming off a 2 month demand here. Like a lot of the stuff that has this 3 week supply is much lower. Well, this has dropped a lot more. And it's got a 4 day inside it there. So I don't suggest you buy it right now, but just something to potentially watch, which is a 5 day at the top there. So it's already rejected that 5 day. And now it's got a 4 day here. But as I say, there are very few things in the market at the moment that have any sort of monthly demands, except for, so the odd thing like CHZ that has a historical monthly demand, but not much that has flipped monthly or 2 monthly demands locally. So these are certainly worth an eye from the long perspective. And if you're a holder rather than a trader, then potentially these could be worth an investment. But obviously, do your own analysis and risk assessment and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this is another one that's potentially worth watching, like not an immediate buy because it's coming into that 3 week supply. But if we can get a retest and consolidation here, or if you see it come through and it flips this zone to support, then potentially. And then again, I have got alerts not that much higher, but if the World Cup does kick in, then these supplies won't mean anything and it'll just run. And this potentially, that's a sort of 3 times the price if it goes all the way back up there. Now, the last 3 are looking a bit more crappy. So they're all at all-time lows. And I didn't check where they're all listed. So I did check where they were listed on futures. And I think CHZ and maybe Lazio are the only ones that are listed on. No, I think CHZ is the only one that's listed on all of them. And I think all the others are only listed on MEXC. So again, maybe CHZ is going to be the more interesting one because it's got the more popularity of being on more exchanges for futures. So again, it's hard to say, but this is just my assessment of possibly a possible narrative that may be coming in the next 3 to 6 months. So again, this still has 3 months supply above and a whole heap of space in it if it does find the bottom. But obviously, at this point, we're still guessing, and at this point, we're still very much in a downtrend. So these last three are at a much higher risk. Should you want to start jumping into these, be a lot more careful. At least the other ones have support, so are more likely to give a bounce and have some break of structure, whereas these bottom three don't really have any break of structure yet, except on the very low timeframes, and they may be testing here for a higher low, but we're still seeing, because we could still very much be, what we're seeing on a lot of alts is that they've done this. So as I talked about in my video earlier, that they've, I had a lot of these 4-day demands down here alerted, and we're seeing some things bounce, but not much is doing more than what this has done, and then dropped to a new low yesterday. The odd thing went higher, but really not many at all. And it's quite hard to judge which. So again, here we're retesting here what looks like a 5-day demand, I think, on this. And it's obviously heavily wicking off the 3-week supply in there. So it's still very much in a downtrend, but something you can keep an eye on if it holds this level. Because the other thing, I guess, is timing for these. I don't know how. I would have to look back, and maybe I'll try and have a look back and do a bit more analysis on this. But again, you can do something you can do yourself is look back at when the last World Cup was, what, we did just look back and it was July that it really moved on CHZ. So maybe, this isn't going to be a nothing burger until June, July. Or are they going to start preparing ready for takeoff at that time? So, it's not a buy immediately type scenario. It's just something that maybe you can think about over the next few months. Bar is much the same as City. Again, made 3 month supplies, and is now coming quite cleanly off 3-week supply in here. So this is the example, similar to what I gave on City. This looked like it had a 2-week demand or a weekly demand, certainly a 4-day demand in there, just got a tiny bounce off it, had created 3-week supply, so it's just dropped straight off there. So again, it's clearly not a buy right now, but something to keep an eye on if the football coins run later. So I've just made this watch list so I can come back to these. And then finally, ASR. So ASR doesn't look quite as bad as City and Bar. The difficulty with this is we've got a giant there's an annual supply in there, so let's just look at the higher time frames on this. So it had an annual supply. It came up and tested last year's candle, went really high. In fact, kind of stopped onto the annual and closed back below, but took out the low. So again, arguably that annual has played out, but then it has made a new 6-month supply, not a strong one because this candle did not close below the green candle. However, or even take out the green candle. However, obviously we still get a reaction off it. So if the zone's weak like this, then it's less reliable, but still I wouldn't trade against it. This is kind of where I come from on strong and weak supply. So as you can see, we're still in that 6-month supply, but again, this has had a decent move up like the last 6 months of last year and has now retraced to the side of this impulse. So essentially, still on a higher low here, did have a wick taking out the low, has taken out the high, so it's a little bit indecisive there, but I don't love the supply on it. However, this now unfortunately, it's likely to make a 2-weekly demand in here. So again, that's going to be a risk for it later. Sorry, 2-weekly supply if it closes this red candle, red or redder. But we do have a weekly demand down here. So again, I've alerted that down there. So that's something you can watch should this visit there in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And yeah, like I said, this is still a very high risk strategy, but I do like the fact that, while this CHZ still has a lot of supply, I mean, to be fair, maybe let's have a look and see the monthlies. Yeah, so I mean, even here, for example, this had a strong move, but rejected still. So there's still lower highs, and obviously we're still on a lower high. And while this has a flip to 2-month demand here, it flipped to it where it had a monthly demand here, obviously wicked off it, but didn't manage to make a new high from there. Similarly here, it flipped to monthly. It came on the immediate candle, had a decent bounce off it. So that's good. In this case, it did make a higher high, but then when it came back, it didn't hold that level and dropped lower. So again, here, hopefully I haven't been front run on this entry here, but if it comes back into this 2-month, then what we hope is for that immediate bounce to take it higher. And, if we get lucky, then maybe to take out this high. But as you can see, yeah, so these are weak demands because they've been unable to take out supply. So when they've come back, it's just gone back for a lower low. Same here, yes, you get a bounce off the zone, but this was unable to take out this supply. So really, you want to see this go all the way up here and then come all the way back down here for a decent long entry. But by then you've missed the bulk of the move. And hence why we try and look at things a little bit early. Yeah, so anyway, that is the football coins. Just a quick one for you. Something to keep an eye on at a later date. And have a good weekend. Bye.